Great, you've found us out. These matters are all core secrets of the Eternal Night Hall. They are not usually revealed lightly. The main concern is that they might leak. Once they leak out, those seedling forces protected by the Eternal Night Hall would suffer a fierce assault from the Ghost Clan. The reason he told Chen Fan was because he trusted Chen Fan, a force capable of guarding the north of the river. If even they were to defect to the Ghost Clan one day, it would mean the Eternal Night Continent's fate was truly exhausted. Yet even so, he also didn't reveal the specific names of those forces under the Eternal Night Hall's protection. Chen Fan didn't speak. He just lowered his head and touched his nose. He realized that the situation in the Eternal Night Continent seemed a bit better than he had thought. At least the higher-ups of the Eternal Night Hall weren't just holding on day by day without a plan. They had plans for the future, though he didn't know if those plans could be successfully carried out. At least there was something. But I actually do need some support. You're serious? Kyuyushi stood frozen in place, a bit dazed and confused. Hadn't Chen Fan made himself clear just now? The Eternal Night Hall's support was meant to be seen by the Ghost Clan. It was to cover your eyes. How can you actually ask for it? Is there any or not? Kyuyushi shook his head quite decisively and refused. This definitely isn't available. If the Northern River defense line urgently needs supplies, we can spare a little to help you hold the line. But now, the supply routes to the Western Wasteland Island have all been cut off. It's very difficult to transport large amounts of resources to the Western Wasteland Island. I need some high-grade building blueprints. Chen Fan ignored Kyuyushi's reaction and carefully chose his words before continuing. I comprehend building blueprints very quickly. I can basically finish comprehending one within 3 days. But the cost is that the building blueprint will be permanently destroyed. At the Eternal Night Westing Chu and Wu Frontline No. 1, didn't they capture a blue-grade building blueprint? Give it to me. After I finish comprehending it in 3 days, I can personally go to the Eternal Night Westing Chu and Wu Frontline No. 1 and build that structure for them. Kyuyushi frowned deeply. After pondering for a long time, he shook his head and said, no. Blue-grade building blueprints are extremely rare. Every single one is crucial. When transported to other regions, they are escorted with the highest secrecy. As long as the blueprint exists, there will be a steady stream of builders who comprehend it, creating that structure for multiple defense lines. Your comprehension would completely destroy the blueprint. That definitely won't work. But I do know, there is a duplicate blue-grade blueprint. I can give it to you. However, you'll certainly need to pay some compensation. Consider it an exchange. Chen Fan nodded. Almost forgot. Kyuyushi suddenly thought of something. He pulled out a token and a paired communication stone from his bosom, handing them to Chen Fan. In the report from Tang Yi, it said you have a way to open supply lines to the front, right? This is the Eternal Night Hall's token. Holding this token means your faction is recognized as a force under the Eternal Night Hall's name. You'll need it when you go to the front lines. Also, if you plan to transport large amounts of supplies, remember to report directly to me through this paired stone. Otherwise, if the Ghost Clan gets wind of it, they might break through the defense line again. Chen Fan took the token and the paired stone, and after exchanging a few more words with Kyuyushi turned and walked away, heading toward the African beast floating in the air at the same height as the city wall. Just then, behind him came Chen Fan's voice, Old Kyu, how about staying for a meal before you go? Kyuyushi's body froze in place. He looked at the people bustling on the Northern River defense line. The aroma of food gradually reached his nose. He stepped, turned around, and looked at Chen Fan, smiling as he asked, did Tan Yi and the others eat back then? They did. Then I'll try some. The food was quickly brought up. It was still that small hut standing on the Northern River defense line. Chen Fan sat there as before, only this time the person across from him wasn't Tang Yi, but a white-haired old man, cloaked in a black robe. The food at the Janbei defense line is really good. Kyuyushi smiled as he picked up a piece of spare rib and placed it into his own bowl. What did they eat before they left? The same as today. Also steamed spare ribs with fermented black beans. Kyuyushi's hand holding the chopsticks trembled slightly. He smiled just like before. Only, at some point, a few streaks of red blood vessels appeared in his eyes. He sent the spare rib in his hand into his mouth. Cooking. His gaze then fell on the plate of brown sugar steamed buns on the table. He couldn't help but pick up a bun and put it into his mouth. Sweet. It seemed he had managed to taste something sweet before leaving. His eldest son loved sweets so much when he was alive. He definitely wouldn't have missed this brown sugar steamed bun. Alright, no more eating. Kyuyushi took a deep breath. He stuffed the half-eaten brown sugar steamed bun into his chest. Suddenly thinking of something, he stood up. Somewhat anxiously, he staggered outside. While patting his own head, he muttered, look at my memory. I almost forgot I still have matters to attend to. I need to leave quickly. I'll see you off. Chen Fan stood up and escorted Kyuyushi to the edge of the city wall. After stepping onto the A-ship, Kyuyushi suddenly thought of something. He turned to Chen Fan. By the way, Chen Yuzhu, that night watcher behind Tangyi, how significant was his activation? Chen Fan paused for a moment before nodding lightly. His activation delayed things until the breeding support arrived. It held the Huanquanqiu defense line and saved many lives. That's good. Qiu Yisi smiled, standing on the deck of the A-ship. Leaning on his dragon-headed staff, he looked at Chen Fan. Waving his hand, he said, "I'm off." The flying boat rose into the air. He sped away into the distance at great speed. Qiu Yisi, standing on the deck of the A-ship, looked at the gradually shrinking deck covering the entire Janbei defense line along the coastline. From the air, looking down, that defense line seemed so insignificant, yet it had protected all of Janbei and sheltered countless common people. And at this moment, Qiu Yisi finally, for the first time, seriously looked down upon all of Janbei, looked down upon the entire Western Wasteland Island. His child had died here protecting the Western Wasteland Island. He could understand Chen Fan's feelings for Janbei, just as he now had feelings for Janbei too. The emotional connection between a person and a region is often built this way. He smiled again. Only this time, there was no need to hide it. His eyes were red. From his chest, he pulled out the brown sugar steam bun he had bitten into earlier, and put it into his mouth. Very sweet. He didn't tell Chen Fan that self-destructing night watcher was his son. He didn't want Chen Fan to bear any psychological pressure or burden because of this. The Western Wasteland Island is so vast, flew for so long and still haven't left the Western Wasteland Island. Yet it's also so small, too small to accommodate even one more person. After Qiu Yisi left, Wang Qi worked over from the side. Kai Yido, why didn't you tell him that Tangyi is still alive? In these 5 days, Tangyi has gradually awakened and can open his eyes. It's just that speaking is still somewhat difficult for now. After a period of recuperation, he will be able to return to normal. Chen Fan shook his head. He said softly, "This is Tangyi's wish." Tangyi burned all the blood in his body, and has lost the identity of a special cultivator of the Five Punishment Village. From now on, he will become an ordinary person. He doesn't want to face his former comrades in this identity. Then he looked into the distance. These 5 days, he had been continuously improving the breeding infrastructure. After the rainy season ends, he will have to start laying the supply routes to the front lines and establish contact with the western part of Yaonai and the Xiu and Wu No. One front line as soon as possible. Line U, Sunset City. Chen Yi looked up into the sky at that A-ship gradually fading into the distance. He recognized it at a glance. That was an A-ship from Yaonai In's external operations team. Chen Yi stared expressionlessly at that departing A-ship. He would rather have died himself. He was deeply grateful that Fan Yu had saved him. It must have cost a great price, but he had already become a cripple. What use was there in living? Time to eat. The strange insect carried a bowl of liquid food and worked before Tangyi. Helplessly, it told him to open his mouth. These past few days, feeding Tangyi had been very difficult. This fellow was starving himself to death. Perhaps it was because he had seen the eternal night calls Africa. Today, Tangyi's emotions were somewhat stirred. His body was still weak. He said hoarsely, "I am already a cripple. Living has no meaning anymore." "What cripple?" The strange insect rolled its eyes. "In a few days, you'll be full of life again. You haven't lost an arm or a leg. How are you a cripple? I am no longer a fire punishment son. I've become an ordinary person." "So what? Fan Yu has plenty of ordinary people." "You mean they're all cripples? Without them planting rice, you wouldn't even have this bowl of liquid food. Without them building your shed, you'd still be out in the storm. You can't see their contributions at all. You're just a cripple. Hurry up and eat. Eat your fill, then get ready to work. You think Fan Yu will support you for nothing? Come farm with me." "No work, no food." Chang Yi was slightly stunned. For the first time, a ripple appeared on his face. Then, as if he had suddenly understood, he obediently opened his mouth. He took a big bite of the liquid food, chewing with considerable force. The glimmer of hope for the future reappeared in his eyes. What he feared most was being useless. But the strange insect made him suddenly realize that he still had a use. As long as he was useful, that was enough. Sunset City. Chen Fan stood under a shed in the distance, watching this scene. He smiled inwardly. He did not go over to disturb them. He just watched from afar. The rainy season was almost over. It was time to prepare, take stock, and start working. Outside the white jade nameless mountain cave, the rain fell endlessly. The rainy season had not yet ended. These past few days, the Janbei defense line had seen little change. The boat's nests landing from the seabed were firmly held back at the coastline, unable to advance another step. And so the days passed. On the 10th day, the rainy season ended. Although those nests still landed from the seabed, their numbers were no longer so great, nor so frequent. There was still no news from the Eternal Night Hall. This meant that the Eternal Night Front had held again this rainy season, which meant another year of stable development. Farewell, Lord Chen. We'll take our leave now. See you next year. The faction leaders passing under the city wall, saw Chen Fan standing on the wall, and waved. shouting their goodbyes. Chen Fan smiled and waved back. Meanwhile, Zhu Hu was responsible for sending these factions back to their own territories via the high-speed rail, and would also provide some ghost market subsidies. During the rainy season, these factions had provided considerable manpower support. The number of people on the Janbei defense line was dwindling. Many factions were withdrawing one by one. Originally, most of these factions came from the Guangxi Plain. In the past, they had many conflicts with each other, but on the Janbei defense line, after eating and living together for a month, those conflicts gradually lessened. Time to get to work on the Janbei defense line. Chen Fan stretched lazily, looking out at the distant sea. He suddenly realized something. That Wang Meizi's miracle had been achieved through a series of coincidences. He still didn't know how Wang Meizi had managed to cross that thunderstorm sea region, and he had done it twice, once each way. To call it luck once was one thing, but twice in a row was a bit too coincidental. The next moment, Chen Fan turned and waved his hand. He exchanged a glance with the one lying on the ground nearby. He worked behind. He hovered in the air level with the city wall above the Africa. He began laying copper pipes. The copper pipes rose vertically, ascending continuously, all the way up to a height of 3,000 meters. Only then did they begin to spread horizontally, stretching straight toward the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Yes, he planned to build an aerial express route, directly connecting to the Eternal Night Western Xuanwu Frontline 1. It was a tedious and monotonous task. He had already prepared himself. For the next few months, he would remain on this Africa. Prison Master Huai. Wang Qi's voice came from the sound transmission talisman in his arms. I couldn't find you on the Janbei defense line. They said you had already left the breeding grounds. Is it convenient for me to report the current breeding situation now? Go ahead, speak. The current reserve of ghost stones for breeding is exactly 10.7 billion ghost stones. Among them, after deducting consumption during the rainy season, the Janbei defense line contributed 1.2 billion ghost stones. The majority of the remaining ghost stones came from the new continent. Chen Fan nodded, acknowledging. During this time, all breeding operations have been proceeding according to plan. You oversee them. Understood. By the way, among the medical supplies harvested this time, Prison Master, a few of the stones seemed somewhat like jade bamboo. The heavenly Dao stones you specifically instructed about. Wait until jade bamboo you return. No need. I am already on my way back. Moments later, Chen Fan entered the ring chamber. He quickly scanned the items floating in the air. One by one, each preserved. Information flashed before his eyes continuously. Occasionally, a flicker of surprise crossed his gaze. Quite a few good things. Then, he fixed his gaze on the two stones floating in the air. A grin spread across his face. Familiar names, familiar scents, familiar panels, heavenly Dao stones. And two of them, two heavenly Dao stones. These two heavenly Dao stones, both dropped by a greater ghost at the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Wang Qi explained from the side. Toad. Chen Fan grinned. He tucked the two heavenly Dao stones into his bosom. Strode out of the warehouse. The breeding grounds now had a considerable reserve of ghost stones, a full 10 billion. Once the connection was made with the Eternal Night Western Xuanwu Frontline 1, he would begin preparing for explosive growth. If that guy were here, take the heaven-piecing pillars, for instance. The heaven-piecing pillars were strategic weapons, not conventional defense line weapons. They could only be used to deal with emergencies, but that was due to insufficient quantity. What if the quantity were a bit greater? What if thousands or tens of thousands were stockpiled? Or even millions? Any strategic weapon, as long as the stockpile was large enough, it could be used as a conventional weapon. Chen Fan was no longer in a hurry to lay the copper pipes. He rode the Africa down to the port. In the clear sky, large patches of rain fell upon those hundreds of heaven-piecing pillars, with thunder and lightning flashing. The wind howled past continuously. He planned to use one of these two heavenly Dao stones, and the heaven-piecing pillars. The remaining one was for the blue-grade building blueprint he had brought back after returning from Frontline 1. Just as he was about to toss the heavenly Dao stone in his hand, he suddenly hesitated and stopped. He pulled out a sound transmission talisman from his bosom, and told Wang Qi to bring the few white blueprints the breeding grounds did not yet have. Let's build these white buildings first. Perhaps they would be more compatible with a heavenly Dao stone, although the panels showed they were just ordinary buildings. But who knows, they might have surprising effects when upgraded to max level. Soon, Wang Qi delivered the blueprints. They were mooring ropes, campfire, and a beast cultivation hut. The first two were white grade, the last one was green grade, all obtained during this rainy season. Blueprint for buildings not yet owned. Soon, these three buildings were all upgraded to max level. None had any further upgrade paths. Each upgrade granted specific enhancements. For example, this lazy rope in hand, the lazy rope reached level 10 and was maxed out. Can it be upgraded further? Obtaining max level effect. Extremely tough. Incredibly sturdy. Chen Fan swung the rope in his hand, a rather heavy rope, a slight oddity on his face. Truly, there are all kinds of building blueprints. Is this even considered a building? He figured it should count as a life defense tool. What it produced was just a rope. The crafting cost wasn't too high, but its strength was its greatest asset. Still, it did come in handy. Fenyu really needed some extremely sturdy ropes. Of course, it was hardly worthy of our heavenly Dao envoy. He then looked toward the campfire. This building was completely different from the ghost fire, but at least it looked somewhat like a proper building. Its purpose was to provide warmth. This small campfire could ward off the cold, and its heating range was surprisingly large. This Taoist could promote it throughout Fenyu. The campfire reached level 10 and was maxed out. Can it be upgraded further? Obtaining max level effect. Huddling together for warmth. The heating range increased. Among these 3 buildings, the most useful was the beast cultivation house. Chen Fanwang was placed in a massive palace nearby. Yes, it was a palace, far more imposing than his wooden hut. Pushing open the door, he looked inside. The ceiling was extremely high, looking prepared for some massive beasts. After reaching max level, it had a decent max level effect. The beast cultivation house reached level 10 and was maxed out. Can it be upgraded further? Obtaining max level effect. Fame draws them in. It held a strong attraction for beasts. It would increase the desire of masterless beasts to join the faction and hope to settle here. This is code. Chen Fan grinned widely. Beasts were an extremely unique existence on the Eternal Night continent, and each beast had impressive effects. For instance, the undersea tunnel was entirely dug by Waiwei. Even the group of monkeys found on the island were now herding sheep on the new continent. If he could attract some passing beasts to willingly join Fenyu, that would naturally be excellent. And after he had upgraded all 3 buildings to max level, Fenyu now had 14 max level buildings. Not bad, but these 3 buildings were hardly worthy of our heavenly Dao envoy. He took a deep breath, prepared to toss the heavenly Dao envoy in his hand toward the distant heaven-piercing pillar. Just then, boom, a massive thunderclap suddenly exploded in the sky. Then, the once clear sky began to rain. Not just above the heaven-piercing pillar, but across the entire Janbei region. No thunder, no lightning, no dark clouds. A rain of emerald green fell without any warning. He had never seen emerald green rain in his life. Chen Fan stood frozen in place, gazing at the horizon. The entire sky over Janbei was shrouded in emerald light, and when the emerald green rain fell upon him in an instant, he felt the exhaustion of these days vanish like smoke in an instant, and felt a lightness, as if his lifespan had been extended. Then, countless panels began to appear before him. Fenyu guards Janbei, Jade Rain descends, Heavenly Dao bestows blessings. All max-level buildings in Fenyu will receive Heavenly Dao blessing effects. Farmland received 3 Heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from the 100 streams. Bridge received 3 Heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from the 100 streams. Life Defense Tool received 3 Heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from within Bixi. Heaven Piercing Pillar received 3 Heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from within Bixi. Chen Fan stood frozen in place, gazing at the panels constantly popping up before him, and in the distance, the emerald green rain falling across all of Janbei. Fenyu had a total of 14 max-level buildings under this emerald green rain, except for the Soul Sculpture, the Divine Cannon, and the Ghost Fire. These 3 max-level buildings, his remaining 11 max-level buildings, all received Heavenly Dao blessing effects, equivalent to obtaining 11 Heavenly Dao envoy rewards at once. He finally snapped out of it. He had completely forgotten about this matter. Guarding Janbei would grant the blessing of the Heavenly Dao. This was news he had learned long ago. In fact, the main reason he had stayed in Janbei back then was largely due to this. But he had been too busy these past days. He had forgotten about it. The rainy season ended. The Heavenly Dao's blessing arrived. This was the Heavenly Dao's blessing for guarding Janbei during the flood season. An emerald green rain enveloped all of Janbei, making the entire region appear utterly dreamlike. But soon, he had no time to dwell on these forts. He had only 100 moments to choose from a total of 11. All max-level buildings had received the Heavenly Dao's blessing effect. He had to hurry and make his selection. This was truly an unexpected surprise. At that moment, Xianxia was walking the streets of Fencheng, feeling the emerald green raindrops pattering down onto his body. He paused for a moment in realization. He couldn't help but spread his arms, close his eyes, and laugh. Many of his techniques required consuming lifespan to activate. He had never planned to live very long anyway. Originally, his lifespan hadn't been much to begin with, but after bathing in that golden rain on the new continent, his lifespan had been extended. Now, it was extended again. That rain on the new continent had increased his lifespan by 50 years. This rain increased it by 5 years. He looked out at the countless people in Fencheng pouring into the streets. Clearly, everyone could sense that this emerald green rain was beneficial to them. They all spread their arms wide, enjoying this gift from the Heavenly Dao. Yet some people were sullen and unhappy. They didn't feel anything special about this emerald green rain. For this rainy season, those who had contributed would receive rewards corresponding to their efforts. The rewards varied. As for those who had contributed nothing, the emerald green rain falling on them had no effect at all. In Xiang City, countless members of the White Bone sect were cheering excitedly. They hadn't expected to be counted as contributors. Even farming counted as a contribution. Hee, Kai Chun laughed with immense joy. In the rain, he realized that not only did the prison master acknowledge his efforts, but even the Heavenly Dao acknowledged them. Let's see who dares to say farming is useless now. The Heavenly Dao says it's useful but you say it's not. Are you more authoritative than the Heavenly Dao? Wait, the strange insect suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at Tenyi. Did Tenyi count as a contributor? Tenyi hadn't guarded Janbei. Instead, he had contributed at the Huangquan Pass defense line. But when he turned around, he saw an astonishing sight. A noticeably dense column of emerald green rain formed within the downpour, enveloping Tenyi entirely. This was an even greater blessing from the Heavenly Dao. This meant the Heavenly Dao believed that Tenyi had contributed more in this defense of Janbei, at least more than they had. The strange insect was dazed and murmured, if Tenyi hadn't held off that batch of ghost nests at the Huangquan Pass defense line, waiting for support from Fenyu, otherwise, Fenyu would have been caught between two enemies, and it would have been hard to handle. Tenyi stood still in place. He looked up into the sky. He could clearly feel the ghost blood flower roots inside his body being rapidly expelled. New blood vessels grew within him. That cluster of star-red flame ignited once more, flowing through his veins, replacing the blood. And this time, he felt no pain, no burning sensation. The star-red flames, it was as if he had complete control over it. The power of Fireworker had returned, and it was fully under his command, the power of Fireworker with no side effects. At this moment, he no longer felt any weakness in his body. He sensed the abundant power within him. Big fish, if I asked you to leave Fenyu, he felt like the old Tenyi again. But this time, he was not the Tenyi of the Eternal Night Pavilion. Rather, he was the Tenyi of Fenyu. He had no intention of returning to the Eternal Night Pavilion. He would stay in Fenyu, stay in this faction without traitors. You can safely entrust your back to this child healer. Strange insect, help me contact Lord Chen Yu. I want to tell him personally that I wish to stay in the breeding ground. At this moment, Tenyi appeared extremely excited. The usual cold and aloof expression on his face had vanished without a trace. Curious Pet was also happy for Tenyi. He took out a sound transmission talisman from his bosom to contact the warden. He had just opened his mouth to activate the sound transmission talisman when the warden's furious roar came from the other side. The communication was cut off. Somewhat embarrassed, he rubbed his nose and put the sound transmission talisman back into his bosom. He said, it seems Lord Yu is quite busy right now. We can contact him later. Tenyi nodded sullenly. He felt that he himself hadn't contributed too much, yet had received such generous blessings from the Heavenly Dao. Since the breeding ground was guarding Janbei as the main force, Lord Chen Yu must have gained even more. Naturally, he would be busy at this time, but every defense line, by guarding a region during the rainy season, and blocking the undersea ghost nests, would receive Heavenly Dao blessings. Yet he looked up in confusion. At the emerald green heavy rain in the sky, he had experienced Heavenly Dao blessings in other regions before, but never on such a grand scale. This was almost stronger than the blessing effects. At the Eternal Night Weston, Black Tortoise #1 frontline, was Janbei truly so crucial in the eyes of the Heavenly Dao? So, was that why the Heavenly Dao blessings for guarding Janbei were so abundant? Or was it due to other reasons? But soon, his originally joyful expression dimmed a little. If the Night Watchman number 97 were still alive, he would surely have loved this great rain, the Saint Lord of the Immortal slaying sacred ground, who had not yet returned to the Guangxi Plain. At this moment, the high-speed train had already stopped on the Janbei wasteland. Everyone on the train had stepped off and stood on the wasteland, bathing in this emerald green rain. This was the Heavenly Dao's recognition of their efforts. The Saint Lord of the Immortal slaying sacred ground spread his arms wide and stood laughing in this emerald green rain. He felt that his lifespan had increased a little. He wasn't sure exactly how much, and the hidden ailments on his body had also been eliminated. If that guy were here, he felt that when he woke up tomorrow morning, he might even be able to stand up again. For a man of his age, this was a rare occurrence. Behind him, the disciples of the Immortal slaying sacred ground were also extremely excited, not only because their lifespans had increased and hidden ailments had been eliminated, but most importantly, this was the recognition of the Heavenly Dao, the Heavenly Dao's recognition of their efforts during the rainy season. How many people in a lifetime could receive the Heavenly Dao's recognition? This was something they could brag about for the rest of their lives. In the city wall of Fan City, Ganyan Yinyu had his hands tucked into his sleeves, gazing outside the wall. The emerald green rain has nothing to do with us too. We didn't activate anything, so naturally, it's unrelated. The great rain said it itself. Well said, Ganyan Yinyu sighed. That night watchman who stayed by Tanyi's side activated it. He should have some merit, right? Then guess whether he can receive this Heavenly Dao blessing. His grave grass might just turn a little greener. The great fish did not speak, but stood quietly on the city wall. Ganyan Yinyu curled his lips and said nothing more. Why we couldn't speak, But at that moment, lying on the ground, a clear sentence emerged from his lantern-sized eyes. How is this my business? Wai Wei, lying on the ground, lifted his head, and looked in confusion at the emerald green pillar above him, that enveloped him. The rain above his head was denser, indicating he wasn't just a minor worker, but what merit did he have? Soon, however, he stopped caring about that, and looked ahead, at Chen Fan, standing under the dense, yet not solid, emerald green pillar of rain. Chen Fan had been standing there, for a long time without moving, that pillar of rain, like a heart, as if it were an emerald green golden cudgel falling from the sky. He was almost worried it would crush Chen Fan to death. Moreover, wisps of golden mist were mixed within the rain pillar, looking very appetizing. Don't rush, don't rush. Chen Fan had no time to care about this matter at all. The crackling rain pillars above his head, heightened, focus, he stared intently at the panel constantly popping up before him, quickly thinking it through, selecting the most suitable heavenly Dao blessings for breeding. There were 11 effects in total, only until the deadline. Time was pressing. Just then, Lord Chen Yu, the child mother stone in his bosom rang again. This was already the 5th person trying to contact him. Chen Fan roared in anger, scram. He took out the sound transmission talisman, along with the child mother stone, and tossed them far away. He continued rapidly filtering through the panel before him. In the belly of the eternal night continent, standing on the deck of the African ship, Qiu Yisi looked at the severed child, mother stone in his hand and the word scram echoing in his ears. Subconsciously finished the second half of his sentence. I am Qiu Yisi. Somewhat bewildered, he looked up into the distance. Is Lord Chen Yu this irritable today? But soon, he roughly figured it out. Lord Chen Yu had taken the lion's share of the heavenly Dao blessings, and was indeed busy and flustered right now. It really wasn't appropriate to disturb him at this time. Then he looked up at the sky above his head. That dense, cutting cosmic rain directly enveloped him. Qiu Yisi bathed in the emerald green rain and laughed. He knew this was the heavenly Dao blessings his son had earned, for guarding Jiangbei with merit, transferred to him. This glory originally belonged to his son, now enjoyed by him alone. Judging by the density of the cosmic rain, the heavenly Dao greatly recognized his son's contributions. If life must have a full stop, then he felt his son's full stop was not bad. At least he would be remembered. Beneath the emerald green rain, the star-red flames that had been rampaging and bursting out of his body gradually calmed down. But their power did not diminish. Instead, he sensed it had grown stronger, and it no longer harmed his body. Originally, he had only a few years left to live. Now, as long as he wished, living another dozen years was no problem at all. The entire Jiangbei was based in an emerald green rain, and on the Guangxi plain, above the forces that had gone to support the Jiangbei defense line, each had its own exclusive patch of emerald green rain. Emerald rain descended from the heavens. Heavenly Dao blessings. Those who guarded Jiangbei with merit were rewarded. As long as one contributed, there was merit, even in places unseen by breeding. The heavenly Dao army would record it. Finally, just before the deadline, Chen Fan let out a long breath. His tense nerves suddenly relaxed. He murmured, finally done selecting. But just then, he suddenly realized he couldn't see clearly what was in front of him. An emerald green water mist. How was it like he'd been blind? Subconsciously, he looked up at the sky above his head, and couldn't help but freeze in place. Is the rain this heavy today? He felt as if a pillar reaching the heavens had smashed him straight into the ground. Soon, he sensed something was off. The cosmic rain, nearly solid like a heavenly pillar, came down from the sky, fell on him without much stinging pain. Like spring rain nourishing all things, a warm current surged through his body, as if he were drifting. This is emerald rain descending from the heavens. Heavenly Dao blessings. After figuring out what was happening, he no longer hurried. After a while, the heavy rain slowly vanished. The sky was clear for 10,000 miles, showing no sign of the rain that had just fallen, and there was no water on the ground. Not even his clothes were wet. Not bad at all, Chen Fan said with a smile. Wai, lying beside him, was lost in thought. Aside from feeling his body lighter and his lifespan seemingly extended, he didn't sense much of the effect of this heavenly Dao blessing. But it was already enough. All max-level buildings for breeding all received heavenly Dao blessing effects, even something like a max-level farm, unless he had more heavenly Dao stones than he could spend. Otherwise, he would absolutely never waste heavenly Dao stones on that. The buildings also received the blessings of the heavenly Dao, equivalent to obtaining over a dozen heavenly Dao stones at once. Calculated by the price of heavenly Dao stones, Fan Yu's gains from guarding Jiangbei during the rainy season this time were by no means small. The main reason was, he gazed at the Eternal Night Lord panel deep in his soul. Regarding the panel for the bridge structure, he would never waste a heavenly Dao stone on a bridge. After all, the bridge's role for Fan Yu was not too significant, merely spanning waters, connecting two lands, and serving as a means for high rail transit. It wasn't worth a single heavenly Dao stone. But if not for this occasion, he would never have known that the bridge structure could possess such a heavenly Dao blessing effect. Bridge received 3 heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one. From within 100 streams, a building can only possess 1 heavenly Dao blessing effect. If you have already made your choice, the heavenly Dao blessing effect, Magpie Bridge Reunion. Newlyweds who clarify their vows in the bridge shall receive the heavenly Dao's favor. The couple may wish for their offspring to become a special cultivator, with a certain probability of realization, but the offspring must be the couple's own blood. Chen Fan grinned widely. He didn't know how much longer the Eternal Night continent could hold out, but he planned to promote this bridge in Jiangbei. Thus, over the next decade or so, many architects would emerge. These architects would all become part of Fan Yu's foundation. His gaze lingered on the plain. There were also many max-level buildings heavenly Dao blessing effects he had never considered before. This time truly gave him a great surprise. The hanging basket gained 3 heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from within Baxi. One building could only possess 1 heavenly Dao blessing effect. You have already made your choice. Heavenly Dao blessing effect, drawing water with a bamboo basket all in vain. Size adjustable and extremely sturdy. The hanging basket is Fan Yu's tire-rail system, which originally had a floor. The limited space of the basket, enabled to hold large items. To transport bulk supplies, one had to build sufficiently long carriages. Now, with this effect, the basket's size can be increased, in both horizontal and vertical dimensions, greatly enhancing Fan Yu's transport capacity. These heavenly Dao blessing effects were all carefully selected by him. They seemed unremarkable, but in truth, each maximally suited Fan Yu's needs. If no suitable one could be found, he would at least pick a highlight. Of course, the highlight was the long-cherished heavenly pillar. The heavenly pillar gained 3 heavenly Dao blessing effects. One building could only possess 1 heavenly Dao blessing effect. Please choose one from the 100 streams. Heavenly Dao blessing effect. 1 Kai transforms into 3 purities. Blessing effects. You have already made your choice. The launched heavenly pillar, upon reaching its target location, will split into 3 heavenly pillars. Each pillar possesses the same power as the original. Chen Fan couldn't help but smile in satisfaction. Now, Fan Yu's strategic weapon, the heavenly pillar, had become even more strategic. Coincidentally, Fan Yu now had 10 billion ghost stones, so it could stockpile some heavenly pillars first. You can stock up on some heaven-piercing pillars first. After finishing all this, he worked aside, picked up the transmission talisman he had thrown away earlier, along with the Mother Child stones, and checked them one by one. Come from Zuhu, from Kitchen, and from Kiaisi. Chen Fan stared at the Mother Child stone in his hand, slightly stunned. Suddenly, he remembered, hadn't he just cursed at Kiaisi a moment ago? The corner of his mouth twitching. Activating the Mother Child stone, he contacted Kiaisi, the chief of the Woundless sect. Before he could speak, the other side came through with Kiaisi's helpless laughter. Contacting you isn't about anything serious. Just wanted to congratulate you on successfully defending Jiangbei against the tide, and to tell you some good news. With Solitude, the Eternal Night, front lines not a single one has fallen. The rainy season is over. We can develop for another year. Congratulations. Same to you. Chen Fan also left, feeling a bit embarrassed inside. Scolding a man in his 70s or 80s, so harshly and bluntly, was hardly appropriate. After finishing all this, Chen Fan returned to Xiang City. Chen Yi, who had been striving to recover to his peak, smiled and said, "Looks like you've fully recovered." Tu Tan took a deep breath before kneeling on one knee. He lowered his head, and said in a deep voice, "Thank you, Jade Master, for granting me a new life. From now on, this life of mine belongs to Fan Yu. I want to stay in Fan Yu and serve the Jade Master." The strange insect beside him watched this scene with some emotion, but inwardly it couldn't help pondering. If Tanyi stays in Fan Yu, what position would he hold? He'd almost certainly join the War Pavilion. In terms of strength, he'd at least be a Vice Pavilion Master, but in terms of seniority, it's hard to say. Still, the position of Vice Pavilion Master of the War Pavilion has been vacant ever since Daryu voluntarily stepped down. Indeed, it's still an empty seat. Why not return to the Eternal Night Pavilion? I won't go back. Chen Yi shook his head. Even my master betrayed me. I don't know who in the Eternal Night Pavilion I can trust anymore. I refuse to stay in a place where I can't even trust my comrades. Fan Yu hasn't betrayed me. I'm not afraid to die in battle, but I don't want my death to come from a dagger thrust from behind by a comrade. Chen Fan paused for a moment before looking at Tanyi. Tanyi, Fan Yu is not where you should be. You should return to the Eternal Night Pavilion. I am in the Eternal Night Pavilion, and I don't have a single person I can absolutely trust. I trust you. If you return to the Eternal Night Pavilion, then I will have someone trustworthy in the Eternal Night Pavilion. Second, Fan Yu will cooperate with the Eternal Night Pavilion in the future to fight against the Ghost Nest together. But Fan Yu doesn't want to die in vain because of the spies within the Eternal Night Pavilion. I need someone in the Eternal Night Pavilion to tell me the true situation and the subtle clues beneath the undercurrents. Third, I can see that your strength has reached a new level now. and your killing intent has deepened. After you return, your position will surely rise. When you stand high enough, it will also be easier for you to purge the traitors in the Eternal Night Pavilion. Chen Yi didn't speak. He just stood up in a daze. The light in his eyes suddenly dimmed a little. He hadn't expected Chen Fan to refuse his request to stay in Fan Yu. These days, he had deeply envied the atmosphere in Fan Yu. No betrayals, no spies. This was where he wanted to shine. But soon, he suddenly thought of something. Then, can I first join Fan Yu, and then return to the Eternal Night Pavilion? Of course you can. Fan Yu welcomes your membership. Later, the strange insect will take you to collect a set of Fan Yu robes and an identity token. For now, you are under the pavilion's jurisdiction. Chao Qiu is your direct superior. Contact him on a daily basis. Important information can be reported directly to me. Chen Fan smiled. This guy is really too clever. He gets it with just a hint. His meaning is exactly that understood. Chen Yi laughed. Light shone again in his eyes. This seems even better. Not only has he joined Fan Yu, but he can also root out the spies in the Eternal Night Pavilion. He held his breath and listened patiently. Chen Fan had just left Xiang City. He took the Fan Yu high-speed rail to the port. Looking out the window, at the crowds quickly receding, a slight smile curled at the corner of his mouth. This is fine. After arriving at the port, Chen Fan went to an area behind the port, in the Jianbei wasteland. Here, under his orders, a large area had been cleared to prepare for storing the heaven-piercing pillars. But before deciding on the specific quantity to store, he needed to conduct an experiment. This experiment would determine whether the range of the heaven-piercing pillars could be increased. Put your box into it. 1-2 pull. In this cleared area, a newly forged first-grade heaven-piercing pillar stood upright on the Jianbei wasteland, and near this colossal pillar, hundreds of meters tall, stood many members of the Fan Yu War Pavilion. At that moment, each of them held a rope, pulling with all their might, gritting their teeth. That was no ordinary rope. It was a max-level building, the cable rope, just built by Chen Fan. After receiving the blessing of the heavenly Dao, the blessing's effect made it even sturdier. Under the combined effort of a group of dance kings, this pillar reaching to the heavens, standing on the ground, began to tilt slowly, descending toward the ground at a steady pace. Below the heavenly pillar was an enlarged and modified breeding high-speed train. The train was very fast. Amidst a chorus of shouts, this first-grade heavenly pillar was soon steadily and firmly placed onto the waiting, breeding high-speed train below, kicking up clouds of dust. Perfect! Cheers erupted from the breeding members all around. Leaning on his jade-candled staff, standing to the side, Chen Fan, who had witnessed the entire scene, couldn't help but smile at this moment. But this wasn't perfect yet. It still needed testing. The next moment, this breeding high-speed train began racing along the tracks, speeding deep into the northern wasteland. After getting familiar with it, Chen Fan chose the Dead Sea as the bombing target. The heavenly pillar placed on the speeding train began to vibrate slowly. Then its outer shell started to crack and fall off, scattering across the northern wasteland. A smaller pillar, with thunder spewing from its tail, broke out of its shell, quickly ascending into the sky, trailing a sapphire blue tail flame, until it crashed into the Dead Sea. Soon after, a faint explosion echoed from the Dead Sea. Chen Fan smiled, laughed heartily. Finally, 5 years ago, he had come to this world. To this strange world plagued by ghostly horrors, with powerful enemies everywhere. Starting from the first ghost fire, the first sword tower, he had built his base bit by bit in the northern wasteland. Over these 5 years, he had never dared to relax for a moment, fearing that a single great battle would drain all of breeding's resources, fearing that a single ghost nest would bury all his dreams. But now, he could finally pack his chest and say, breeding had grown to a considerable scale. The breeding mobile cruise missile test was a success. This meant that, as long as he was willing, he could lay down enough railway tracks, and he could launch the breeding cruise missiles to any location on the Eternal Night continent. Next, the breeding members got busy again, beginning to select a new missile storage area. Since it was confirmed that the breeding cruise missiles could be mobile, they needed to find a larger area for placement. The port was no longer suitable. It was too small here, and too conspicuous. The final location was chosen behind Nameless Mountain. This place was vast and sparsely populated, with almost no breeding members coming near. It was just right for placement here. Chen Fan let out a long breath, rubbed his hands together, and set aside the matter of laying the sky rail for now. Standing on the platform, he looked down at the large empty area below, gazing at the Eternal Night territory. In the main panel, the Heavenly Pillar building was confirmed for construction. Soon, a phantom of a heavenly pillar composed of white lines quickly appeared, and alongside it, a large amount of ghost stone liquid surged through copper pipes, solidifying rapidly, landing steadily on the ground. A max-level heavenly pillar was completed. 1 tube, 2 tubes, 3 heavenly pillars were erected one by one. Gradually, the sunset appeared at the horizon. Chen Fan had been busy all day, and the sky was growing dark. Eternal night was about to descend. Chen Fan stood on the deck of the A-ship. He looked down below, at the neatly arranged 2,000 max-level heavenly pillows in the area, his expression somewhat dazed. Is this a work of art? A perfect work of art? A moment later, members of the intelligence pavilion quickly arrived on the breeding high-speed train, carrying 4 large wooden plaques on their shoulders. They fixed one on each of the 4 sides of the city wall. Breeding No. 1 missile storage base. That's more like it. Chen Fan looked at the plaques and nodded with satisfaction. What do you mean, over by Nameless Mountain? It has its own exclusive name. Breeding No. 1 missile storage base. Time passed. The next day, Chen Fan forged another 2,000 heaven-piercing pillows, and named them the Breeding No. 2 missile reserve base. Over the following half-month, Chen Fan stayed in breeding, mainly busy with various improvement tasks there. After finishing all the scattered and trivial matters, half a month after the rainy season ended, Chen Fan stood on the deck of the A-ship. He looked down at Wang Kui and the others, seeing him off. Chief, Deputy Chief, this trip will take a few months. I'll set up signal towers along the way to ensure communication won't be cut off. While I'm away, Wang Kui, you're in charge of breeding affairs. Contact me promptly if anything's uncertain. The rest of you, continue carrying out your tasks as planned. The male ghost kneeling on the ground said no more. Standing on the wasteland, Ju Fu and the others nodded in unison. After a few more brief instructions, Fidor slowly rose into the air, heading straight to the sky above the northern wasteland. Chen Fan, standing on the deck, he began laying the sky valley in the air, an aerial track made of illusory bronze pipes. This track would lead straight to the eternal night, western black tortoise No. 1 defense line. It was a relatively time-consuming task, but also a necessary one, extremely important for breeding. It wasn't just about that blue-grade building blueprint. It held greater strategic significance. After watching the prison master disappear into the distance, Wang Kui and the others exchanged glances, chatted for a while, then went their separate ways. They had plenty of work ahead. Though the rainy season had ended, breeding still had no shortage of tasks. After all, the next rainy season would come. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. Standing on the deck of the A-ship, Chen Fan, he stared into the distance, exerting force. At the coast, the eternal night western black tortoise No. 1 defense line, stretched 108 kilometers long. This was the information he had, estimated to be about 100 meters high. So this is the front line. Chen Fan took a deep breath, a sudden sense of security rising within him. With a defense line of this scale guarding the front, the eternal night continent should be hard to fall. But he soon recalled the new continent, where the level 7-10 defense line had ultimately fallen. Just then, a Fidor suddenly sped toward him, and a voice mixed with a wind faintly reached his ears. This is the eternal night western black tortoise No. 1 front line. No entry for unauthorized personnel. Tubos there. Chen Fan from Janbei breeding. Chen Fan first announced himself, then pulled out the token given to him by Qiu Lao from his chest, and waved it in his hand. Before lying, the Fidor that had been hovering ahead, keeping a cautious distance, slowly approached as if receiving some signal. A middle-aged man stood on the deck, his face stern as he looked at him. Chen Yuzhu, please wait. Our person in charge is patrolling the front line. He will receive you personally. Chen Fan nodded lightly. The Fidor followed ahead, slowly approaching this imposing defense line. It was obvious Qiu Lao must have notified them here. The closer he got to the defense line, the more he felt its terror. The Fidor beneath him was not small, but before this defense line, it seemed like a bamboo dragonfly, appearing quite tiny. Behind the defense line, the ground was densely packed, with countless people bustling back and forth. One could also see rows of wooden huts huddled together, providing shelter for those on the line. When the Fidor leveled with the top of the defense line, Chen Fan, holding a jade ledger, stepped off the Fidor and landed on the city wall. There, a woman stood on the wall, smiling warmly as she looked at him. Behind her stood 7 or 8 others, each exuding an air of authority. But now, every one of them forced a smile. It was clear they weren't used to smiling, their grins looking eerie, like a vicious duck eyeing a chicken leg. He forced out a strained and difficult smile. Chen Fan stood on this front line that shielded the eternal night continent, one of its vital lifelines. July descended from Africa as well, standing behind him with a face full of indifference. On this trip, July was responsible for basic security. He looked at the crowd before him, paused for a moment, then spoke with some hesitation. May I ask who is in charge here? Based on the formation, it should be the woman in front. But he had never seen a frontline commander who was a woman. It's me. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman standing before the crowd stepped forward with a smile. What? Look down on women? Chen Fan frowned deeply, stepping back slightly. No, I just didn't expect the Eternal Night frontline commander to be so young. Young. The woman seemed delighted, her seductive demeanor vanishing, laughing so hard she could barely close her mouth. Lord Chen Yu is also young. Geki built the Janbei defense line, didn't he? It shows we're both accomplished at a young age. He knew the Eternal Night Hall would definitely send someone to contact him. Chen Fan greets you. Eternal Night Westing Shu and Wu No. One front line, overall commander. The ghost nests raged. Everyone contributes, and Fenyu is no exception. And this trip, I've specially built an air rail connecting Fenyu and the front line. This air rail can transport supplies, such as ample food. The woman took a deep breath and said, "Speak, how many ghost stones do you want? If the price is high, we can negotiate for a stick of incense's time." Inside the command room on the wall of Eternal Night Westing Shu and Wu No. One front line, the woman stared at the teacup in her hand, gritting her teeth, and spoke in as official a tone as possible. The No. One front line has a full 770,000 people. Daily food consumption is no small matter. I want them to eat better, but many of the No. One front line supply routes have been cut off. The remaining routes have no spare capacity to transport food. If we buy with ghost stones, we might not be able to afford it. Chen Fan was silent for a long time, then rubbed his temples. Somewhat troubled, food costs nothing. Fenyu will aid you for free, but it certainly can't match the free meals of the Janbei defense line. The woman stood frozen, looking up at Chen Fan in disbelief. She had thought Chen Fan wanted a good price, but never expected it to be free. Really free? Chen Fan nodded lightly. This is aid from Fenyu, thanking the front line for guarding the Eternal Night continent. This deal requires nothing from you. But there are other transactions. For example, Fenyu needs many building blueprints. Any duplicate blueprints you capture on the front line can be sent to Fenyu. We'll give you a certain ghost stone return, including that blue-grade building blueprint. So the woman looked at Fenyu with some confusion. So Fenyu came this time, just to freely fund the front line with food, and take back some blueprints. Yes, great. The woman was silent for a long time, then suddenly jumped up, shouting excitedly in the room. Chen Fan's mouth twitched slightly. She walked out of the command room to the edge of the wall, gazing at the vast, surging sea outside, as the biting sea wind rushed toward her. Even after leaving the room, the woman's excited voice could still be faintly heard inside, calling out, "Lord Chen Yu." At that moment, the middle-aged man who had been following the woman strode toward him, apologizing in a low voice. "I am the deputy commander of No. One front line. Please forgive her. Her teacher was originally the overall commander of No. One front line, but he sacrificed himself during this rainy season. She took over this position. Her teacher was her only remaining family member. On top of that, suddenly bearing the heavy burden of the No. One front line on her own. The pressure is immense. Her emotions have become somewhat unstable. I hope you can understand. It's nothing." Chen Fan shook his head. That explained things well enough. Then the middle-aged man smiled and said, "Come, Lord Chen Yu, let me show you around the No. One front line. Please." The two walked side by side on the wall, with July following not far behind. He held a lunsword under his arm, arms crossed. A dug-tail breast dangled from his mouth. He gazed out at the sea beyond the city wall. A flicker of emotion stirred in his eyes. Lust in thought, wondering about something. Next, the two of them worked on, chatting as they went, and the city wall. The man shared quite a bit of information about the front line of Sector 1. After working for a long time, Chen Fan stood atop the city wall, feeling the solid weight beneath his feet. Gazing beyond the defense line, he too would have such a line of defense. This kind of defense felt far more secure. Stepping onto the city wall, Chen Fan looked at Sister Chen and the other leaders, waved his hand, and said no more. He boarded the African. As the African rose into the air, he prepared to head home. He had been away for 3 months. A bit weary, standing on the deck, he looked down at the blue-grade architectural blueprint in his hand. Item name, Chuan Wu Cannon. Item effect, blue-grade. Item grade, architectural blueprint. The city wall building panel description was extremely simple, just a few lines. Go home first. He stretched, yawned tidily, and decided to go back and get a good night's sleep. Finally, he arrived in the heart of the Eternal Night continent, inside a city belonging to the Eternal Night shop. Kyuyisi stood in a room filled with various inspection documents, craft paper and other information. He looked at a worn, aged piece of craft paper in his hand, muttering in the ancient era, Janbei Yuxi, the origin of the Undying Heavenly Master. The Janbei defense line. The Undying Heavenly Master once had an architectural blueprint, called the Heaven-Piecing Pillar. It was said that no one had fully comprehended it for a long time. Other architects had tried but all failed to grasp it. Ever since he learned about that building Fenyu had, called the Heaven-Piecing Pillar, he had been holed up in the library these past days, because he always remembered that he seemed to have seen those 3 characters somewhere before. Could it be, Fenyu had discovered the ghost mine left from the ancient battlefield? Kyuyisi nodded thoughtfully. Looking back now, that architectural blueprint from back then, the one, the Undying Heavenly Master failed to comprehend, should have been fully understood by Chen Fan, and he had built it, Just then, from outside the library came the sound of Tan Yi's voice. Recently, Yisi put away the craft paper in his hand, smiling as he looked outside. Tan Yi had survived a narrow escape from death. He was very happy to hear this news, especially knowing that Tan Yi had undergone heaven's blessing. Like him, the negative effects of the fire punishment had completely vanished, and his strength had greatly increased. Soon, Tan Yi stepped into the room, his expression serious as he stood still. In these 3 months, I have carefully investigated, Master, everyone you assigned to me. Among them, I have confirmed one person as a traitor, and the information about the support for Defense Line 7 last time was leaked by this person. Yisi chuckled, laughed heartily, looking Tan Yi up and down, appraisingly, then beckoned him over. Come here. As for leaking intelligence, that person's name is Wang Far, right, Master? You know, Tan Yi, am a bit surprised. Of course I know, Yisi said with a smile. This was a test I set for you. Naturally, I had to know the correct answer, but since Master knows, why hasn't he taken any action? Because that would be too wasteful. Yisi stood up and walked toward the depths of the library. The traitor who has passed on correct intelligence and is trusted by the Ghost Clan. To us, he is also an extremely useful pawn. At certain critical moments, we can use him to feed false information to the Ghost Clan, thus turning the tide. He walked up to a wall, gazing at the painting hanging there. I've already reported to the higher-ups. In a few years, I won't be able to keep this up. You are my chosen successor for the Eternal Night Shop's Western Operations Group, in charge of the deployment and appointment of all Western Operations Group members. In these final few years, I was primarily responsible for training you. What you are about to see are the highest secrets of the Eternal Night Sect's Western Operations Unit. The next moment, the painting before them suddenly caught fire without wind. Then, a crack split open in the middle of the wall, slowly widening, revealing a staircase lit by oil lamps, leading underground. Follow me, Fenyu. After 3 months of hard work, Chen Fan returned to Fenyu. His first order was given immediately. Send grain along the sky rail to the front lines. Only then did he collapse into sleep. After resting for a night, Chen Fan stood atop the city wall. He stretched with a long, lazy yawn and laughed. Enough sleep time to work. These past months are done. Now it's time to focus on Fenyu's own development. All the buildings need upgrading. Just then, rumble rumble, a deafening roar came from the horizon, shaking the earth and mountains, the ground trembling faintly, as if the sky itself were collapsing. Chen Fan's expression shifted slightly. He quickly strode toward the nearby flying boat, soaring into the air to search for the source. He saw nothing. There's fog today, he muttered, but the distance is short. He pulled out the compass of shadows from his robe and said gravely, quickly detect the source of the sound. His greatest fear now was that the mountain range north of the river had collapsed. Those endless mountain ranges were the manifestation of the Eternal Night Continent's core tremor. One could say these mountains were the main barrier against the Ghost Nest's landing. Their defensive line was merely patching up the fractured formation areas. If the entire mountain range north of the river collapsed, the gap would be impossible to seal. He would have to abandon the north bank, and he would have to quickly decide whether to retreat to the new continent or to the Yellow Springs Pass defense line. Once night fell, the Ghost Nest would devour the north bank. Soon he received a response. The Fenyu member closest to the sound source relayed the message layer by layer until it reached Chen Fan. Sect Master, it's the sound of a hill collapsing, came the report. Starting from Sector 1 on the west side of the North Bank defense line, the ground is shaking violently, as if something is burrowing out from the earth, and it's spreading rapidly along the defense line. Currently, it has already spread to Sector 27 on the west side. Upon receiving the news, Chen Fan's face turned stern as he steered the flying boat swiftly toward the west side of the North Bank defense line. Before lying, he arrived at Sector 38 on the west side. By then, the disturbance had already reached there. He saw the ground ahead of the defense line, churning as if an earth dragon were beneath, with soil surging to both sides as it advanced rapidly, racing upward along the defense line. And the defense line stood the divine cannons, their runes glowing with energy, already primed to fire at any moment, awaiting only Chen Fan's command. He didn't know what was happening. The corpses of ghost creatures that had yet to be cleared outside the defense line were now tossed into the air. He could sense something enormous, moving underground, speeding along the defense line's path, extremely fast, and its allegiance unknown. A ghost creature? Impossible. The North Bank hasn't fallen yet. Ghost creatures can't move in daylight. A beast? Lured by the beast cultivation hut. Damn it, Chen Fan's lips twitched. That might actually be possible. But this beast it lured, isn't it a bit too big? Can my beast cultivation hut even contain it? At this rate, it looks more like an earth dragon. Friend or foe? Let's wait until its head emerges. Chen Fan didn't give the order to fire immediately. He only declared an emergency battle readiness. Many Fenyu members still asleep were instantly roused. quickly reaching their battle stations. The Janbei defense line, for the first time, the entire system was fully activated in broad daylight, can open fire at any time. Finally, this earth dragon that had been churning endlessly underground, reached the eastern end of the Janbei defense line. The churning stopped. The next moment, the ground began to tremble violently. Then, a defense line stretching 170 kilometers, slowly emerged from beneath the earth, standing tall on the coastline, only a few dozen meters away from his Janbei defense line. What's going on? Chen Fan's pupils constricted. He recognized this defense line. It was the one he saw in the Undying Celestial Master Vision. The ancient Janbei defense line. Hadn't that line fallen in ancient times? Why has it appeared again now? Moreover, he also saw countless people up ahead, busy at work on the suddenly appearing defense line. These people's bodies appeared translucent, clearly not alive, and they didn't turn to look at them even once, just busied themselves, minding their own affairs. Just then, once again, Chaikyu's voice came to his ears. Prison Master, Section 99, west of the Janbei defense line. A ghost is standing in the air there. Chen Fan frowned deeply, quickly maneuvering the Africa. He arrived at the location Chaikyu had reported. When he got there, from afar, he saw an old man with graying temples, a smile on his lips, his eyes full of regret and unwillingness, yet also carrying a hint of resignation. He was constantly turning back to survey the defense line behind him, his body translucent, just floating there in the air. He paused for a moment, then descended from the Africa onto the Janbei defense line, gazing at the translucent old man, standing dozens of meters away, suspended in the air. After a brief pause, he spoke hesitantly. Greetings, Senior. This is the Janbei. I do not know your identity, Senior. The old man did not reply, as if he hadn't heard at all. He just kept turning back to look at the defense line behind him. After an unknown time, the old man finally looked forward, as if carefully examining the Janbei defense line, or perhaps meeting Chen Fan's gaze. He revealed a smile. Greetings, future people of Janbei. I am Old Yi, the person in charge of the Janbei defense line. Pleased to meet you. I am sorry we failed to hold Janbei. The Janbei defense line has completely fallen. Before dying, I performed a ritual to heaven, sealing the Janbei defense line. This is the last gift I leave for Janbei. If anyone can still hear these words of mine. The old man's voice grew fainter and fainter, unable to hide the unwillingness and confusion in his brows. The next moment, everyone on the defense line before him suddenly froze in place, then quickly began to move, appearing extremely urgent. No sound came through, yet it was instantly clear that a ghost nest was attacking. Chen Fan stood on the Janbei defense line, frowning deeply as he watched scene after scene, and the defense line before him. All those translucent figures began sprinting rapidly along the city wall, but the wall began to collapse, section by section. Countless corpses flew through the air. He could not see a single ghost tomb. What he witnessed was a final battle before the ancient Janbei defense line fell. Until the defense line before him, the city wall was nearly completely destroyed. Not a single figure remained. In an instant, the 170-kilometer-long defense line was covered in cracks, shattered in a flash, turning into bursts of white light, vanishing into the air. The defense line disappeared, as if everything they had just seen was nothing but a fleeting cloud, or perhaps an illusion, and what remained in the ground was only a long, massive trench of earth, 170 kilometers long, vaguely telling them this was no illusion. That old man had also vanished along with the defense line. Only this excavated scar of earth remained. Then, countless spirit stones flew into the air from the trench, then gently fell to the ground. Mixed among them were some medical supplies and blueprints, like a dragon vein treasure map. This scene before him was utterly surreal, as if it weren't real. After a stick of incense at month's end, this earthen scar would no longer spew anything out. Under the gaze of all, the earthen scar slowly healed again, returning to its complete state, as if nothing had ever happened. This is a formation. Chen Fan stepped out of the Janbei defense line, standing on the ground where the earthen scar had been. Tai Yu rushed over upon witnessing this, speaking urgently. Congratulations. This is a formation set up in the ancient era. When the Janbei defense line fell in ancient times, they buried all the remaining ghost stones and treasures deep underground. To keep them from the ghost layers, this required a great formation to complete, and was triggered by a specific node. When this great formation judged that Janbei was no longer a fallen zone, the things it spat out would not fall into ghost lair hands. The great formation would then manifest, spitting out the hidden ghost stones and such, for future generations. As he spoke, Kai Yu sighed with emotion. Nowadays, almost no faction could set up a great formation of this scale. He always felt that from ancient times to now, much had been lost in the gaps. Chen Fan said nothing, only furrowing his brow slightly as he looked at his feet. He finally understood. Why was Janbei clearly an ancient front line, yet had no ghost mines, while Jiangnan, not a front line, could still occasionally discover a ghost mine. In ancient times, before the Janbei defense fell, they buried all ghost mines deep underground, at a depth so profound, even Y could not sense it at all, and that illusion made him feel that the ancients were quite pure. After a long while, he finally said, no need to apologize. Jianbei now has the breeding ground guarding it. It will not fall again. A group of breeding ground members had already stepped out of the defense line, quickly gathering the ghost stones spat out from underground, storing them away. These were ancient ghost stones, still intact after crossing thousands of years. After this small interlude, Chen Fan returned to Nameless Mountain, once again. Witnessing the fall of the ancient Jianbei defense line made him feel that the current Jianbei defense line was still insufficient. It must become stronger. Time passed unknowingly for over half a year. Soon the rainy season would come again. At the end of October, Chen Fan worked alone through the various areas of the breeding ground, continuously upgrading its basic structures. For example, the construction workshop. He stopped before the already max-level construction workshop and smiled. In this half year, he had upgraded the armor workshop to level 9, gaining 2 new craftable vehicles, both of which had greatly helped the breeding ground. For instance, after upgrading vehicle offense and defense to level 8, a new vehicle, the giant golem, was added, slow in movement speed, but with strong carrying capacity. A 30-meter tall humanoid giant golem. It is a giant humanoid track, a full 30 meters tall, requiring 1 million ghost stones and 1 giant ghost corpse. But the effect. Chen Fan looked into the distance. The giant golem was carrying a heaven-piercing pillar on its shoulder, stepping firmly toward the rear of Nameless Mountain. Yes, a heaven-piercing pillar, a massive existence hundreds of meters tall, was thus carried on the giant golem's shoulder. With the giant golem, many things that were once difficult to accomplish could now be done easily. This was the reward for upgrading vehicle offense and defense to level 8. As for the level 9 upgrade, Chen Fan looked into the distance again, at the flying swords drifting over the Jianbei defense line. The new vehicle added at level 9 was the flying sword, 3 feet of clear wind. Riding the sword was extremely cool, but its speed was not too fast, inferior to the African breeding ground. The internal purchase price was a bit cheaper. Many breeding ground members would buy a flying sword. The insect price will be a bit cheaper. Many breeding members will buy a flying shear, usually used for arresting people and showing off. He had also tried it. It wasn't cool, at least when flying. He couldn't hold the Jade Ledger, but without carrying the Jade Ledger on him, he felt a bit insecure. As for the level 10 attack and defense upgrades, they hadn't reached level 10 yet. Rising to level 10, it required consuming a heavenly treasure, the heavenly shallow tomb. He had never seen such a heavenly treasure before, nor heard of it. For now, he couldn't upgrade it to max level. Just then, from beside him came the voice of Kuaihu. Young master, this was the most chaotic time of the year. Everything is basically ready, just waiting for your inspection. Chen Fan arrived and boarded the Jianbei defense line. The new rainy season was about to arrive. This year, the Jianbei defense line had seen almost no changes, but change was imminent. The ghost stones accumulated over a year of breeding. He paused for a moment, then moved his mind, and left. The next moment, this 170-kilometer-long Jianbei defense line began to vibrate slowly, began visibly and rapidly rising. Walls from level 1 to level 6, upgraded to level 7 walls, required 7,000 ghost stones and 1 monkey head fruit. After consuming 1.19 billion ghost stones and 170,000 monkey head fruits, the walls of the Jianbei defense line reached a uniform level 7, officially stepping into a level 7 defense line. The height reached 50 meters. Before him, panels kept popping up. Wall upgraded to level 7. Balance strength increase. 1. The wall can self-destruct, unleashing tremendous power. 1. Reduce ghost fire consumption on walls. Defensive building ghost stone cost. 2. Slightly further increase wall sturdiness, will deal reduced damage to the wall. He swiped through each panel one by one. Chen Fan looked at the panels popping up before him. Uniformly, he quickly selected the first upgrade direction. However, Chen Fan, though, seemingly, mechanically selecting the first upgrade direction, was extremely focused. Soon, he spotted a special panel. Wall upgraded to level 7. Balance strength increase. 1. The wall can self-destruct, unleashing tremendous power. 1. Qualitative change, 10,000 household lights. The wall itself will have a ghost fire range. Ghost fire range depends on the highest level ghost fire installed on the wall. This qualitative change upgrade direction can take effect on connected walls. Rare, enemies attacking the wall at close range. Enemies attacking the wall from a distance will deal reduced damage to the wall. He swiped through each panel one by one. Chen Fan smiled. A rare level upgrade direction. If this upgrade direction appeared on other defense lines, at most, it would save some daily ghost fire maintenance costs, but taking effect on the Jianbei defense line, that was a true qualitative change. The Jianbei defense line had the legend of the Great Wall. The qualitative change could achieve a 1+1 greater than 2 effect. He continued confirming panels one by one. No more upgrade directions that could affect connected walls appeared. Soon, the Jianbei defense line was fully upgraded. Height reached 50 meters. The 170-kilometer-long level 7 defense line stood in Jianbei. But this was not the end. breeding continued. This year, a large stack of ghost stones had been stored, all to have a major breakthrough before this rainy season to happen. He continued upgrading, after spending 1.7 billion ghost stones and 170,000 monkey head fruits. The walls began to rise again, reaching 80 meters. Before him, panels popped up again. Wall upgraded to level 8. Balance strength increase. Please choose upgrade direction. 1. Reduce ghost fire consumption near walls. 2. Increase human stamina recovery near walls and injury recovery. 3. Enhance wall pattern effects. The third, he continued uniformly selecting the third, upgrade direction. Soon, the Janbei defense line can reached a uniform level 8 wall, level 8 defense line, but this was still not the end. Upgrading from level 8 walls to level 9 walls required consuming 20,000 ghost stones and 2 storks of any heavenly treasure. Wang Qi stood on the wall beside Chen Fan. Chen Fan looked at Wang Qi, who was waiting nearby. Smiling, he asked, how many monkey head fruits are left in the warehouse? Still 1.97 million. The monkey head fruits produced these days are all stored in the warehouse. Wang Qi murmured dazedly. That's enough. Chen Fan smiled lightly. These days, he basically stayed at the breeding grounds, not focusing on any single key point. He accidentally cultivated 1 million monkey head fruits. Enough ghost stones. Enough monkey head fruits. If not now, when to upgrade? The city wall began to rise rapidly, like a giant buried in the earth, emerging from the ground in one stretch. Its final height stepped at 100 meters. 100 meters. This matched the height of the eternal night western Xuan Wu No. One front line. Now, the Janbei defense line, in terms of wall strength, had far surpassed the No. One front line. At least the No. One front line had no ghost cave patterns. It consumed 3.4 billion ghost stones and 340,000 monkey head fruits. The city wall rose to level 9 with increased strength. Please choose an upgrade direction. Significantly boosted human stamina recovery near the wall. 2. Significantly reduced hunger for humans near the wall. 3. Significantly accelerated injury recovery for humans near the wall. He chose the first option uniformly. There was an altar, no need for recovery. There was a granary, no need to starve. Today was the last day before the rainy season arrived. Countless breeding members rose early today, bustling about, and they soon witnessed a sight that stunned them. The Janbei defense line kept rising, higher and higher. After half a year of silence, it was meant to make a stunning debut. Chen Fan was momentarily stunned. Looking at the panel information, he suddenly laughed. Even he had thought that reaching level 9 was the end, and it would be hard to continue to level 10. After all, level 9 already matched the Eternal Night Western Xuan Wu No. One front line. But it wasn't enough. Janbei wasn't a front line, and didn't have that many ghost nests. Moreover, the conditions for level 10 were surely harsh. Janbei couldn't possibly complete it in a short time. Indeed, the conditions were very harsh. But for the breeding grounds, it was nothing. To raise the wall to level 10, it required 50,000 ghost stones and 5 storks of any rare heavenly treasures. This was just the cost for a level 9 wall. To ascend to level 10, such conditions could crush many factions. The next moment, the Janbei defense line began to rise again, stopping at 200 meters. This was the height of a max level wall. 200 meters, like a continuous mountain range, standing on the Janbei coastline. Before him, another panel popped up. City wall raised to level 10. Balance strength increase. This upgrade has no direction choice, and it has reached max level. Then another panel appeared. City wall. It has reached level 10. It has reached max level. Can it be upgraded further? Obtaining max level effect. His voice boomed like a vast hall. The sound you make standing on the wall can echo across heaven and earth. The Janbei defense line, a level 10 defense line, finally belonged to the breeding grounds. They now had their first level 10 defense line. Chen Fan stood on the Janbei wall, gazing at the sea, and chuckled. Next, I need to take over every gap on the western wasteland island, like the No. 7 defense line and the Yellow Springmouth defense line, completely. Abandon the original defenses, and build Janbei's own defense lines. He wanted to seal off all gaps on the western wasteland island, creating a safe zone that the ghost race could never breach. Then he could massively support every Eternal Night front line, with soul statues and other auxiliary structures. This was a move that could affect the entire war situation. At that time, the ghost race would surely be furious and sneak over to find him, only to see 3 level 10 defense lines stationed at the 3 gaps on the western wasteland island, a frontline ghost nest that couldn't even handle a level 9 defense line. After a 100-step survival sneak attack, what could it do to him? He would turn the western wasteland island into an absolutely safe territory. The prison lord's ground was already completely sealed. Wang Qi stood at the edge of the wall, looking down. The height even made him a bit dizzy. 200 meters high. Isn't that a bit wasteful? Janbei doesn't have ghost nests on that scale to waste it on. Chen Fan smiled. He smacked his lips. Why did we work so hard digging ghost stones in the new continent? What was the purpose? Was it to store them in the warehouse and let them breed? Our rear here is secure enough. Only then can we act without restraint on the front. Otherwise, look, we're on edge right now, transporting a bit of grain to the front lines. Worried the ghost clans will take notice. It's a bit frustrating. There still aren't enough ghost stones. He calculated the breeding's resources. The remaining ghost stones, after upgrading the city wall to level 10, consumed 8.5 billion ghost stones and 850,000 monkey head fruits. Now, breeding only has 9.9 billion ghost stones and 780,000 monkey head fruits. To fully take over the Yellow Spring Pass defense line and the No. 7 defense line, and upgrade both to level 10, is definitely impossible, but we can take over the Yellow Spring Pass defense line first, and use it as a secondary backup line. Ahead of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, we can build a line belonging to breeding. The breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line. It doesn't need to be max level. Level 7 or 8 is fine. That's enough to deal with a ghost nest sneaking through. Then we can take over the No. 7 defense line. There's still not enough time. Chen Fan sighed with some regret. If only he had another 5 years of peace to develop. The ghost stones in the ancient battlefield of the new continent have all been dug up. The ghost stones being mined now are all from the natural open-pit ghost mines formed by the world-dominating phenomenon. Night fell, and the machines descended upon the Guangxi plain. Various factions came to support, just like last year. But when they arrived at the Janbei defense line, and saw the city wall towering 200 meters high, they all stood frozen in place, silent for a long time. This year feels a bit too safe. A thunderclap suddenly exploded, fully unveiling the prelude to the rainy season. When the first ghost nest, its eyes filled with brutality, charged from the sea onto the land, it suddenly stopped in its tracks. Then its head struggled to tilt up, and further up, until finally, it soared the top of the defense line, almost touching the sky. In its originally savage pupils, a trace of clarity suddenly appeared. It turned back in confusion, looking at the figure behind it, who was roaring out orders, and a flicker of doubt and bewilderment crossed its eyes. It was as if it were saying, "You want us to charge and break through this defense line? Are we really not afraid this year?" In the Janbei defense line, Sector 1 in the west, the breeding member still responsible for this area this year, glanced at the disciple of the immortal slaying sacred ground beside him. Two looked extremely excited. This year, the two of them were still in charge of this section of the defense line. Not afraid anymore. This immortal slaying, sacred ground disciple's grin nearly split to his ears. This year, I really don't know what to be afraid of. Even if this place becomes the front line, I don't think it'd be a problem. The breeding member laughed as well. Maybe it's time to think about marriage and having kids. With things as they are now, a child born can actually survive. In the night, high-speed trains departed from the breeding domain, passing through the Yellow Spring Pass defense line via elevated sky rails, heading straight to the eternal night western Xuanwu front line No. 1. Before, he wouldn't have dared to openly send these strategic supplies, but now screw it. If you've got the guts, come at me. Chen Fan, too, was standing on the Janbei defense line, admiring his level 10 fortifications. Suddenly felt the mother-son communication stone in his arms vibrate. An old man's voice came through. Lord Chen Yu, am the overall commander of the Eternal Night Continents, Western Xuanwu front line No. 1. Go. Chen Fan raised an eyebrow slightly. He remembered this man's voice. When he visited frontline No. 1 over half a year ago, this man had shown him around the front line and explained some things. But he remembered this man was the second in command. The top commander was a woman. Xianxia is dead. Dead. The ghost nest was coming. The leading graded ghost had stepped forward to provoke. Xianxia had worked onto the city wall, recalling the ambush. I am now in charge of the Eternal Night Continent's Western Xuanwu front line No. 1, temporarily serving as the overall commander. The voice on the other end paused for a moment, before speaking again. On behalf of everyone at Frontline 1, I thank the propagation sect for the support. 100,000 soul sculpture taxis. At the price Ghost 11 set. I believe the propagation sect is selling at a loss. Truly, thank you. But we court a traitor. Unfortunately, that traitor has already leaked the information to the Ghost Clan. The Ghost Clan might attempt a stealth crossing to the western Wasteland Island. Apologies, the communication is cut off. Chen Fan rubbed his nose. 100,000 per sculpture. He hadn't actually lost much profit. But that wasn't important. What mattered was that Sister Chan was dead. He furrowed his brow slightly, vaguely recalling the woman he'd met upon first arriving at Frontline 1. Her style quite bold and unconventional. Hadn't the rainy season just begun? The graded ghost had provoked them. He let out a soft sigh. This too was fate. First, let's reinforce the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. The ghost nest might try to sneak across. Let's prepare in advance. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line is very short. Only 27 kilometers. It won't consume many resources. He glanced again at the group of bouncing ghost nests below the Janbei defense line. Even if they came surging in like waves, they couldn't even touch the top of the city wall. There was no need for the divine cannons to open fire. Just let them climb. Even after climbing for dozens of days, they'd never reach the top. 200 meters high, are they joking? That's taller than these ghost nests' lives. Then a propagation high-speed train, loaded with various supplies, drove into the Janbei wasteland under the cover of night, heading straight for the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. It was time to take over the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Everyone prepare. The person in charge of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line paced nervously along the city wall, constantly inspecting. This was his second year as the overall commander. Although they were an inland defense line, untouched by ghost nest erosion, the brutality of last year had left a deep impression on him. What if it happened again this year? Several hours had passed since nightfall. Just then, the sound transmission talisman in his arms suddenly emitted a familiar voice. This is the Janbei propagation domain. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line is about to face a massive ghost tide, one beyond what the Yellow Spring Pass defense line can withstand. From this moment on, the Janbei propagation sect officially takes over the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. As his words fell, within the illumination of ghost fires, train after train emerged from the darkness of the Guangxi Plains, entering the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Before he could react, a flying boat emerged from the darkness, level with the city wall. Chen Fan, leaning on his staff, stepped onto the city wall, looked at the person in charge of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, and said with a smile, "Do I need to introduce myself? You should recognize me, right? Chen Fan of the Janbei propagation domain. Open the gates. The propagation sect is going to build a propagation Yellow Spring Pass defense line ahead." Soon, several gates of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line opened. Countless propagation high-speed trains, following pre-laid tracks, drove beyond the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Over the past half year, he had already laid 2 tracks between the propagation sect and the Yellow Spring Pass. The moment the trains exited the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, huge mechanical constructs jumped down from the trains. Large numbers of propagation sect members began unloading supplies on the spot. Various materials were quickly moved below, and the trains swiftly returned. There were ghost fires, soul sculpture taxis, and all sorts of miscellaneous supplies. Temporary ghost fires were lit one after another, driving away a vast expanse of darkness, providing a construction zone for the propagation Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Chen Fan, riding the flying boat, began rapidly laying down the first-level city wall. At only 27 kilometers long, in less than the time it takes to burn an incense stick, he had built a 27-kilometer propagation Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Then, he continuously upgraded the city wall. Soon, the propagation Yellow Spring Pass defense line reached level 7. Formally installed level 10, ghost fires were lit. The entire breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line was instantly illuminated, bright as day. Darkness was instantly driven back over a vast area. The person in charge standing on the Yellow Spring Pass defense line saw this scene and stood frozen in place, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. This was the first time he had such a thorough understanding of the breeding sect's strength, the first time he witnessed what breeding speed truly meant. This was just too terrifying. How much time had passed? In the originally empty wasteland, a defense line had been built out of thin air. At this speed, those breeding sect members seemed as if they had trained countless times. They cooperated with EXTREME Chinese letter. A defense line nearly rose from nothing in an instant. He saw those breeding sect members in uniform attire, and suddenly felt, Line U is the REAL Chinese letter. What were they? That's just a purely CIVILIAN Chinese letter, isn't it? In the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, all members and assistants responsible for guarding the city, and the architects here climbed the city walls, staring blankly at the scene before them. This scene was a shock to them. An ABSOLUTE Chinese letter. Chen Fan had already stood on the city wall, as the ghost stone turned into liquid, flowing rapidly through copper pipes into the wall. The monkey head fruits transported by high-speed rail, melted and flowed continuously into the wall. This breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line was upgraded again to level 8, level 9, level 10 in the blink of an eye, after consuming 2.58 billion ghost stones, and 243,000 monkey head fruits. This 27-kilometer-long breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line was fortified, rising to level 10, reaching a height of 200 meters, standing before the original defense line. The defense line had been upgraded, but various tasks still needed completion. Chen Fan stood on the city wall and began crafting city defense structures. As usual, vision cannons and anti-air cannons, the whole process flowed smoothly. Before long, the 27-kilometer-long breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line's city defense structures were all fully crafted. Next came the main event. Chen Fan looked at the Eternal Night Lord panel, that somewhat exaggeratedly styled Xuanwu cannon, and laughed. Half a year ago, he went to the Eternal Night Westing Xuan Wu No. One front line. The biggest gain was obtaining this blue-grade city defense structure, the Xuan Wu Cannon. A Xuan Wu cannon composed of white lines suddenly appeared in the high sky, not solidifying, but turning into countless semi-transparent geometric shapes. CONTINUOUSLY Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter in the air. Decomposition AND Chinese letter Chinese letter. Finally, these semi-transparent geometric shapes all neatly covered the surface of the breeding Yellow Spring Pass defense line city wall, turning into countless protruding existences, like decorations, making the breeding Imperial Pass defense line appear more imposing. Yes, there were no cannons present, transforming cocoon into spirit. Structure name: Xuan Wu Cannon. Structure grade blue. Structure level: Level 10. Structure effect: City defense structure max level effect. Xuan Wu is one of the 4 divine cannons. Forging all 4 divine cannons simultaneously can fuse into the heavenly Dao cannon. Shenfine, looking at the Xuan Wu cannon description in the Eternal Night lore panel, and laughed. This was his first time forging a max-level Xuan Wu cannon. After all, this Xuan Wu cannon was somewhat picky. It could only be placed on a level 10 defense line. Low-level city walls couldn't accommodate it. Then he pulled out a heavenly Dao stone from his bosom, weighing it in his hand, then took a deep breath. His body like a bow, he fiercely threw the heavenly Dao stone in his hand. The next moment, another panel appeared before him. You used the heavenly Dao stone on the Xuan Wu cannon, and obtained 3 heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from the 100 streams. One structure can only have 1 heavenly Dao blessing effect. Heavenly Dao blessing effect 1. Xuan Wu soul. The consumption of the Xuan Wu cannon will be greatly reduced. Heavenly Dao blessing effect 2. Xuan Wu domain. All enemies within the range of the Xuan Wu cannon will feel a surge of gravitational force. The 3rd heavenly Dao blessing effect, Xuan Wu's death. The power of the Xuan Wu cannon will be slightly increased. These are the 2 heavenly Dao stones he left behind last time. One of them was used on the Xuan Wu cannon. All 3 effects are decent. After pondering for a moment, he chose the 2nd heavenly Dao blessing effect. The Xuan Wu domain is essentially a control skill. He personally wasn't inclined to choose the effect that reduces consumption of heavenly Dao blessings that can be compensated for with ghost stones, but the other heavenly Dao blessing effects simply cannot be compensated for with ghost stones. After confirming his choice, he looked at the Xuan Wu cannon with eager eyes, wondering if he should fire a shot to test it out. He had no idea how powerful this cannon was. After all, it had consumed quite a bit of his resources. Just then, suddenly, Zyro Kiyu's voice came through the sound transmission talisman in his arms. Prison Master, a wave of ghost nests is surging outside the defense line. Shenfan turned his head to look into the distance. There, under the ghostly firelight, batches of familiar flesh balls were rolling continuously across the ground with a wind. Good, he smiled. Then I'll use this batch of fleshworm ghost nests to test the power. Shenfan rode the African eagle through the air, overlooking this batch of fleshworm ghost nests, and activated the Xuan Wu cannon. The first ancient stone embedded in the city wall surface lit up, emitting a cyan light. Then the second, the third, the fourth in the blink of an eye. The 1024 ancient stones embedded in the city wall surface were rapidly lit one by one. These lit stones resembled a Xuan Wu, manifesting across the entire city wall. The next moment, all the ancient stones were fully lit. Boom! An invisible shockwave suddenly surged from the base of the Fanyu Huangquan mouth defense line. The commotion was as if a colossal beast was turning over deep underground. Then, a faint roar of a Xuan Wu echoed between heaven and earth, shaking the soul. Each of those ancient stones emitted a cyan beam of light. When the 1024 cyan beams converged, a nearly translucent cyan Xuan Wu suddenly appeared, lifting its head and roaring. Its voice, like stone grinding through the void, echoed into the Yin Valley. A colossal being, like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep, rushed into the fleshworm ghost nests. Every palm strike crushed a large swath of fleshworms, and the fleshworms' death throes were completely ignored by the Cyan Xuan Wu, the massive giant. With a base width of several hundred meters, Shenfan, who had already landed on the defense line, stared intently at the scene. Without hesitation, he immediately pushed the Shikigami cannons and began bombarding the Cyan Xuan Wu. Dozens of Shikigami cannons rained down a relentless barrage on the Cyan Xuan Wu, yet they didn't inflict a single wound on it. The shells passed through the Cyan Xuan Wu and landed in the ghost nests, just as he had judged. This Cyan Xuan Wu, not only completely immune to enemy attacks, but also completely immune to attacks from the defense line. After all, this Xuan Wu had no physical body, and, like the copper pipes, existed in an illusory state. This is pretty damn impressive, Shenfen murmured in a daze. The Xuan Wu cannon's attack method wasn't a beam of light, but summoning a massive, extremely powerful, and illusory Cyan Xuan Wu, naturally invincible from the start. The only way the Cyan Xuan Wu could die was by exhausting its energy. It couldn't be killed, and those fleshworm ghost nests, after approaching the defense line, seemed as if slowed by some effect. Their rolling speed decreased significantly. That was the power of the Xuan Wu cannon's heavenly Dao blessing effect. Dude, Shenfan, and laughed. But whether it's truly good depends on the consumption. He looked at the Eternal Night Lord panel. This one shot of the Xuanwu cannon consumed 100,000 ghost stones. Not bad, not as much as he had imagined. And in the Eternal Night Lord panel, the Xuanwu cannon clearly stated, no cooldown required, can be fired at any time. In other words, as long as he had enough ghost stones, the Xuanwu cannon could fire 100 times simultaneously. There would be 100 heads. The Siang Xuanwu in its illusory state, rampaging and trampling through the ghost nest. Soon, the fleshworm ghost nest was cleared. The cyan black tortoise, having lost its target, began to stare blankly at the ground. After a long while, it slowly dissipated into the air. 2 sticks of incense. Chen Fan looked at the 2 burnt incense sticks beside him. The duration of the cyan black tortoise was roughly around 2 sticks of incense. That's fairly enduring. But I don't know its exact power, nor if it can take on a greater ghost. Pity there's no greater ghost to let me test it. And at that moment, at various points along the Yellow Spring Pass defense line, everything has been set up. Some have been reassigned. The breeding members here are all in their positions. Now there's one more issue. To appoint as the commander of this defense line. After a moment's thought, he took out the child mother stone from his bosom and contacted Elder Kiyu. Soon, the connection was established, clear as a bell. Elder Kiyu asked, how many people do you need? Just say the word. Ask for whatever you want. Elder Kiyu's hearty laughter came through the child mother stone. The commander of Defense Line 7, and the commander of the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. Give me both of them for the breeding division. The other side of the child mother stone suddenly fell silent. After half a moment, Elder Kiyu's voice came through. The Janbei defense line isn't even considered a secondary line. Then those 2 defense lines would suddenly have no commanders. Fan Yu will take over. You mean, the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander will serve as the new one you're building? Fang Yu and the Yellow Spring Pass commander are about the same, right? Chen Fan explained the reason to Elder Kiyu, the child mother. The other side, Elder Kiyu, was silent for a long time before speaking. Originally, it's the authority to transfer personnel from the Eternal Night Hall's Western Action Group, especially the transfer of a defense line's overall commander. But the Eternal Night Hall's Western Strategy Hall Master is drinking with me right now. He handles personnel assignments. Let him talk to you. Before his words faded, a voice noticeably older and impatient resounded through the child mother stone. Lord Chenfen, I've already been informed. What you're sending to the Eternal Night Western Black Tortoise Frontline 1 are the soul sculptures. What I want to ask is, can you send these warrior soul sculptures to other Western frontlines? This structure is very important to us. Of course you can, but it needs some time. The aged voice from the child mother stone said decisively, I'm giving them to you. Defense Line 7 and the Yellow Spring Pass defense line. All the people are yours. The defense lines are yours too. From now on, the Western Wasteland is all under your breeding division. I'll issue the order right now. With that, he quickly ended the communication, not giving Chen Fan a chance to reply. Chen Fan's mouth twitched slightly. It seems the front lines are really tense, for even such a big shot to start playing these little tricks. He only asked for 2 people, but they gave him so many. Clearly, the Eternal Night Hall couldn't afford not to, so they just handed everything over. Call that guy over. A moment later, the Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander nervously looked at Chen Fan. Lord Chen Fan, you wanted to see me? Chen Fan casually glanced at the man. Keep an ear out for messages. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander, though unsure what was happening, instinctively gripped the child mother stone in his hand. Soon, the child mother stone grew hot, and a drunken old man's voice came through. Cheng Hubert, I am the Eternal Night Hall's Western Strategy Hall Master. I'm issuing an order now, listen up. Deng Huber's face instantly turned serious. For the Strategy Hall Master to contact him personally meant an important mission was coming. From now on, you are expelled from the Eternal Night Hall. The Yellow Spring Pass defense line commander stood frozen, instinctively looking down at the child mother stone in his hand, wondering if it was fake. More shocked than seeing the Janbei defense line, our high-ranking leader contacted him directly, just to tell him, you're fired. You and everyone on the Yellow Spring Pass defense line are all joining the breeding division. Before he could reply, the communication was cut off. Before he could react, Chen Fan worked over and smiled at him. Get the letter right, go back, take the Huangquan Pass defense line, and tally up everyone. Then tell everyone to prepare for a meal. Have some midnight snacks to settle your stomach. After settling this matter, Chen Fan returned to the group of Kitchen and the others. He instructed that after Zhang Qiuber joined the breeding division, Dumo would be responsible for mentoring him. Let him get a general understanding of breeding. After giving a few more instructions, Chen Fan set off back to the breeding division. Soon after dawn broke, Chen Fan had already returned to the Janbei defense line. Standing on the city wall of the Janbei defense line, he weighed the Heavenly Dao stone in his hand. This was the last Heavenly Dao stone of the breeding division. The last one. He looked at the Heavenly Dao stone in his hand with some emotion. He then slammed the Heavenly Dao stone heavily onto the city wall beneath him. The next moment, another panel appeared before him, using the heavenly Dao stone on the city wall. Obtain 3 heavenly Dao blessing effects. Please choose one from within Baxi. A building can only possess one heavenly Dao blessing. Effect 1. Heavenly Dao blessing effect, indestructible. The city wall's defense will slightly increase. 2. Heavenly Dao blessing effect, majestic and grand. The city wall will appear more majestic, and slightly enhance the effects of all upgrade directions. 3. Heavenly Dao blessing effect, ironclad fortress. The city wall will be immune to 50% of long-range attacks. After pondering for a moment, Chen Fan chose the second heavenly Dao blessing effect. Combining this heavenly Dao blessing effect, it could further enhance the effect of the ghost cave patterns. He held his breath and listened patiently. He then turned and gazed toward the Guanan Plain direction. The defense line was 97 kilometers long. The distance was considerable. If starting from scratch, to build a 97-kilometer long level 10 defense line, the ghost stones were still insufficient. However, given another half year, it would be just about enough. The 3 gaps on the western wasteland island could be completely sealed by him. I hope this year's rainy season can pass safely. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, murmuring softly. As long as this year's rainy season passed safely, then by next year, Fan Yu could officially take the stage. He could formally participate in the confrontation with the ghost clan. Yu Zhu stood on the defense line, gazing into the distance at Chen Fan by the sea. From a sound talisman in his arms came Zyro Kiyu's voice.